side that would have to be added back in. And then lastly, we have a pending discussion about ACTI. So those are the budget priorities discussed. Some pending items that can still affect the budget from now until the final budget are discussed as healthcare. Yep.
When you're done.
Yep. So the couple items that would affect the budget from now until June is healthcare. Like I said, we have 10%. We are highly confident that will hold, but we still are waiting finalized quote. The same thing with liability insurance. We believe what's in the budget will be there, but until we get official quotes back from our vendor, we can't confirm those numbers. As I mentioned tonight, transportation services, that'll be a big difference here for the district, and we don't know what to expect from a budgetary impact standpoint on what that transportation services are to get in. Homestead, farmstead is a big one. We usually get those numbers in May. We'll update the committee and the board where they stand when I get that information. That always has a significant impact, at least to the local taxpayers. The district-wide, we don't see any net neutral for us, but the taxpayers see a difference. And then obviously the state budget, we are still waiting for them to give some more information on whether the state budget is progressing. Right now we have got little news for us progressing.
You told me a sense that we were going to keep the Chromebooks on the year.
I thought that we in the last step.
That's why I reflected it removed from the budget, and then we'll have a further discussion about
So
what
we're
the
going to add
process
back in.
moves forward.
Any questions? Was the presentation over?
No, we still have to go to the last section. Nope. So the last section here, I'm just going to go through of what you're seeing on the page. The next 3 pages are based off of those revenue scenarios of a tax increase. So the top section there above shows 4 years of actual, and those are fund balance. If you look at the 24-25 budget and the fund balance, that would be what our audited for June 30th, 24 fund balance would reflect. And then if you look at 25-26, that is what it would be projected forward from last year's budget deficit carried forward. The biggest thing to note, which I touched on with the FBS committee, is the usage of our $6.1 million we have allotted in fund balance to the middle school high school. This will be used and expended to pay the contractors. The board had for many years decided to build up funds to then take less debt service to pay for that project, and that's now being apportioned very shortly here in the next few months to the end of the project. So that's the biggest difference there is the use of that $6.1 million. If we jump down to revenues, it's broken into the 6, 7, 8, and 9,000s. See, we have just under 40,500,000, and then total resources would be a combination of the fund balance total plus the revenue to get us just under that $51 million that the district can use in the revenue side of things. And we're going to jump down to the expenses. So we have the expenses we talked about of 42.5 to get us down to the ending fund balance bucket there in the bottom, which we're looking at going to just over $8 million. The biggest difference there is using capital reserve that the board approved back in October. That's the difference between capital reserve plus the difference between the deficit of revenue and expenses gets us down to that $8 million. The difference between this scenario with the 0% and the 1% and the 2% is obviously the tax increase. 1%, every 1% is about $180,000 per district. So the FBS committee had recommended a 0% to a 1%, with the caveat of a 1% being solely for ACTI. The 2% is there for discussion purpose only and for visual purposes, but that was there just to show every 1% what that would project for the district as a whole.
Tom, where do we keep the ACTI?
We currently keep that within the expenditures portion, which would be under, if you look at back under the expenditures, it would be under 1,300, 500. So if you look at a 1,300 for VOTEC, And then you go to column 500 is part of that 400, just shy of $440 million in tuition and debt service, anticipated debt service for the ACPI. Right now, that only incorporates 180,000 of what the prior year increase was. I'm sure there's going to be a discussion for, but any questions, I guess, on the presentation side?
Well, I would just clarify the point of the committee recommended a 0 to 1%, the committee recommended 0%.
I would say that Brian recommended 1, and the other members recommended 0 with a consensus of 0 to 1.
The consensus was 0.
It was 0.
Yeah.
The consensus is 3 which 1 will not.
Anybody have any other questions?
Can I just ask, have you done an analysis to find out how many houses are being built every year for Mayberry, and then what kind of tax revenue we can expect year by year going in?
I only know what we've been told through random sources, which is,
You've never contacted them
No.
for a schedule?
no, we have not.
It's a very slow process right now.
So say we originally heard anywhere from 10 to 15 homes a year.
Tom, I thought I heard you say, if you don't mind me asking, I thought you heard you say that they were originally saying 500 homes, and I was saying 200?
Correct.
Okay, okay.
I believe they have 3 different phases. And, Harry spoke about a year ago, a rotary meeting, and shared that information. I don't want to misrepresent him, but it is a slow process of bringing those homes.
Maybe very similar to his other stone farming project of how the pace for the build process of doing construction is very similar.
Yeah, but when you talk about that, Dr. Missile, to clarify, it's still only going to be 200 homes total, right?
In this first phase, that's right.
Okay, there is another phase?
He does have a few other phases.
Oh, wow.
that he would like
At
to
the
do.
same areas?
In the same area.
Oh, so what would, do you have any idea, sorry, I didn't stop on you.
I don't know how many total homes.
You don't?
are sold.
Okay.
I'm unsure.
Okay, I didn't know if they said, look, this part of the land, you only allow 200 homes, that's it, or if they said, all right, you do phase 1, and then there's more over here, that's why I was asking.
Should we contact and find out if it affects us and our plan?
Yeah, we can certainly contact them and ask them.
Wouldn't-
Those homes will only sell as quickly as
Yeah, but
they
they
are
have
able
a
to be
plan,
built.
we can at least know their plan of how many homes, how many phases, how many years.
Because there's an overall approval with your water management and all for whatever phases they have, because that had to be originally approved. And then, of course, they do phases. So you've got Stoner Farm over here that's still phasing out, correct? All right, and then you got Mayberry over here. Is there any others that you know of?
Not that I know
In
of.
Germany Township, they talked about it a lot, and out there by, past the car wash on the left-hand side, there's fields that they talked about building houses there, and there's even plans, but I don't think it's gone through.
Plans on 97 South, have been there for
What's 194?
10 years, 15
I'm talking
years.
about 194, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
but
just
I'm
saying,
saying,
there
there's
are.
plans all over the place for a bunch of
Yeah, I'm not
houses.
saying it's gonna happen, but there are, anything's potential.
Jeannie, to add to that, I heard that they had a perk problem over there.
Yeah.
That was a hang up. And I guess if it doesn't perk, really not gonna do it.
Well, I'm not saying rely on revenue that's not there yet, but at least know their plan and their phases in the years, so we can at least say,
Yeah, I
we
agree.
know something's coming.
I agree.
I can call back.
Any other questions? Thank you, Tom. Okay, on to the agenda. All right, any questions, concerns about the board minutes? All right, so that's policy 903, 906. All right,
Are we gonna get a wooden flower for Mr. Khan
I don't know.
for that $20? I wanna know what it looks like.
Mr. Kenny didn't come and give an update
No, he's gonna give it, it's on this one.
I didn't see it.
14.
Oh, there, I did see it. Thank you.
Yep.
He
Okay,
was unable to make it.
okay, that's okay, I just wanted to make sure.
All right, under property and supply, policy 610, requires us to recommend the bid for approval for transportation. Situation is, we need to, either outsource buses or get more bus drivers. Complications that require on that are, one is Carolyn said in her presentation on at least 3 different occasions that it's cheaper to work from within than from the outside, as she's noted. So by us sending out, things are gonna get expensive. So what questions do we have on that to come on the RFP
I guess
process?
my first thing is everybody see the FDS slide that I highlighted by the transportation, what we're requesting is the transportation service. I highlighted that, that's not for there was about 6 or 7.
I mean, why don't you go over to that?
Okay, so the highlight of the transportation services is looking at a 5-year request, 25, 26 through 29, 30. This would only be focused on regular education and athletic routes. We currently outsource our contracts for special education at end of 2027 and non-public runs in 2026. The anticipation would be to consolidate all those at end 2030 to 31. We have some requests for the contractor. They are going, the request is that they install all of our cameras and radios. We use BCC money to buy new cameras and like them to be installed on, like we would contract out buses on those buses. They would also have to maintain secure newer buses with 10-year or newer vans. This would maximize our reimbursement back to the state. They have trigger points after 6 years is a lower threshold, and after 10 years is a lower threshold. They would also be staged at our current bus lot, so the contractor would keep their buses on our property, hopefully saving costs on transportation mileage. They would also, since their buses would be there, they would use our transportation building, such as the bathroom, break room, secure premises, have access to that. Since the buses and properties on ours, they would be able to extension of their rights. And then we would also request that they give all current Littlestown drivers and bus and vans for first driver approval on all open positions. That's the kind of the ask from the contractors, and then Littlestown, the district would like to maintain the authority over creating and managing all routes. We can benefit the district and our students rather than the contractor maximizing their profits. Benefit our students and manage that better. We also are going to continue using, allowing fuel usage. We have that diesel which is upgraded for compliance. We currently let contractors use that when they credit us back on their invoices. We look to continue to do that. The same thing with gasoline. It also saves us on having requests back from the state reimbursement of tax. We would also look at the sale of the fleet. This would go through and we would pull that out separately and do that as a separate bid. That's kind of a highlight of what's in about 1 pages worth.
And anybody have any questions?
I do, if you don't mind.
No, let's
Yeah.
yeah.
Talking about them using the building, the maintenance building and the lot, what liability wise, insurance wise, is that coming to the district?
I already looked into that. That would be no change from our liability. We might actually reduce some of our liabilities if we don't own the buses. They would be responsible for the buses. We would just be responsible for essentially the pavement underneath the buses.
And the building?
Yes, the building would still stay.
So
would
they
just
weren't required to have insurance on the building, you are?
We would have insurance on the building. It would still be our building. They would just be able to go use the bathroom and the break room in between shifts and whatnot. They would still be all rights to the building. They just have to have to see Laura, the transportation director, discussion on our next meeting.
So I think what you're saying, Sullivan, is if the bus breaks down, who's fixing it and where? Is that what you're?
No,
So
actually,
picking up-
I was more worried about, should something bad happen, let's say they back a bus in there and burn the building down, then the district's gonna end up using our insurance.
Well, they wouldn't be in the bus, that's what I'm saying, the bus wouldn't even be in there.
Oh, but I mean, anywhere near it, or let's say somebody vandalizes them on our lot, or what's our liability, should that happen?
So that would be, if they vandalized it now, it would be the same.
But yeah, but we own it, I mean, now we have a contract.
own
No, we don't own the buses, I mean, we don't own
It
the.
would fall through them, we would just assist in assessing what vandalism happened, or what, so we wouldn't be reliable for the vandalism.
Yeah, because it concerns me because, as you know, every time you make a claim, the our insurance rates skyrocket, obviously, that's why I'm asking.
So essentially, we would insure the land underneath the buses, and they would insure the buses, so anything that happened with the bus would go to them first, and anything that happened to the building would be ours.
So they wouldn't be repairing buses
No.
in our bid update.
Correct.
So the buses would never be in the, or should never be in the.
Correct.
Okay, got it, thank you for clarifying. I see.
Any other questions?
Yeah, what kind of numbers are we looking at?
Brian, I wish I could tell you.
You have no idea, what kind,
Until
who
it's-
around us, hired out?
We, districts,
Yeah.
we, us and Southwest are the only ones that have currently in-house operations.
Okay, then what does Hansel pay? They gotta be
Yeah.
close.
One of the things that we were tasked with that's really difficult is Laura took a look at, Mrs. Mace took a look at a number of different contracts. There is no one contract that looks exactly like this.
Sure, I get that, but you can still, yeah, you can get a
I would
pretty
say
good
that-
idea of what we'll be looking at.
I would say the other uniqueness is because we already currently outsource two different contracts, they, I should say, other districts do a one-stop. They can't pinpoint what's regular versus special versus non-public to give us a good number to go off of. They say, here's our total, but we're only looking at doing a piece of that right now. When we get to 20, 30, 31, we would then be able to say, this is what other districts of our size have paid, and we could use that. But that's some of the uniqueness in this current scenario that we're kind of faced up against. We can't really get a good semblance of what that would cost us.
But it's probably more than what we pay maintaining our vehicle drivers.
When we first looked at it, we were looking at, it would be the way we've structured this to try to mitigate the district's costs, having them use our lot, use our fuel. We're hopeful that it'll be somewhat to what we're currently budgeting for operations, at least for initial.
Can you, Tom, explain how this would affect the people that will be running the buses and or driving them?
You mean our current employees?
Yes.
So that would be,
As opposed to the contract.
that would be if the district would choose to go with the outsourcing, company, the board would have to then interview those employees for their positions. The employee would then be able to go through their interview process.
Can you speak up, please? Can't hear you.
So the interview process would be up to that contractor. They are required to interview our employees and give them the first opportunity for the interview.
Wait, that information was on page 7 in the packet we got.
Well, the only reason I ask is because I was out getting something at the store one day and I ran into one of our bus drivers. I'm not going to name his name, but he was very upset about us going to a contractor. He said that Frederick County originally on a contractor, now they're back to their own buses. I don't know the details on that, but that's what I was told by him. And he was a really nice guy, and I'm like, well, I really don't know where to go with it. I mean, the problem we're having is we've got to raise their pays to keep them, and then we got teasers and everything else, and I know you said you paid, and put me if I'm wrong, 1.4 million now, roughly, is what we're paying. You said it would, you at the time said it would probably equal out.
That's still the expectation. We would think so, but we won't know. The opportunity for the board is to, if we'll just give a scenario, the contract, the vendors would provide us with a high estimate. The board can continue as is with what our current operations are. We still have a fleet, we still have at least 11 personnel here at the district to contract services to supplement that. Continue forward, we can always reassess and relook at that at a future time, or we can assess and say we want to address the staffing issue in a different aspect. Rather than contracts. That's something the board can do when we look at what numbers we get back.
When we first realized that this was going to be something that we would be exploring, we sat down with the bus drivers right away. Mr. Mr. Showbaker and I went out and sat down and talked with them about it, spent time to answer questions that we could answer and take everybody through this process. And this process that we're talking about has really kind of followed that same course that we talked about since the beginning. We value our bus drivers that we currently have. They do a tremendous job with our students, and we recognize that. That's why we want to make sure that whatever vendor we would hire takes a look at them and who they desire to keep working with our students and our bus district. So we want to make sure that we provide vendors with that upfront knowledge right away.
And these are our buses will stay here, so they don't have to like go to
Correct.
somewhere to get a bus. So
Correct.
if they all want to stay, they.
So that saves the district money. That doesn't allow, that doesn't charge, the vendor then doesn't charge mileage from wherever that driver's home is to the lot.
Any more questions?
I have a question, Carl.
Okay.
Ms. Ressler said page 7. I don't think I have that document, I never got it.
It's on the agenda.
Oh, okay,
It's
so,
on the agenda.
Agenda.
When you get that
Okay.
the link.
Under drivers.
The link,
Yeah, I'll have to-
will be down there.
Okay, but I didn't get a chance to review that.
That almost is the reference.
Any other questions?
When you guys talked with the bus drivers, were they in favor of this? Did you get a mix?
There were mixed feelings back and forth from what I recall.